Namaste, can you hear me? Perfect. So today is September 21st. It's the equinox. Astrologically, it's a very important day. So with that in mind, it's a good idea. I mean, most of you started herbology today to send out prayers and especially to Lord Dhanvantari, who is the presiding deity for all the herbs, and hope and pray that whatever we learn, may it come, because this is such an important transformational time for the seasons. And of course, whatever's happening outside is also happening inside. So with that, I'm going to give a little prayer to Lord Dhanvantari, Om Dhanvantaraya Namaha. And also give a little prayer to Krishna. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate. One of the things that I kind of wanted to discuss today was the case study form review, the block 1 case study form. One of the things that we've noticed with everybody who submits their case studies. Now, we're an online college, so most of the course is done online, but it is pretty interactive. And it's really when the students start submitting the case studies, we realize, oh my God, they never understood A, B, or C. And it's hard for us to go back and say, you need to do this again. So some people end up taking, 3, 4, 5, 6 months after the course is done. So one of the things that, Dr. Kirti and I decided is that we want to introduce the case study forms early, because what we used to do before was, hey, all your modules are finished. Here's your case study form. Here's an example. Here's a sample. One class and do it. And we didn't think we were doing a good job. So in order to improve the experience and making sure everybody gets it, because when students present their case studies, even if it's half a case study, we know where they stand because we know how much of the knowledge has been applied. So I'm going to start with, this is a disclaimer that I use personally for my practice. And even if Carolyn, you're a nurse, even if you're everybody needs to have a disclaimer. And without a disclaimer, do not do, even if it's your relative or friend or neighbor you're using as your volunteer, please have them sign it. And if you haven't started practicing and you're Sapna, you already have a practice, Angela, you already have a practice, so I'm sure you have something you're already doing, but add something about Ayurveda as well. So do not use your clients as guinea pigs. Have a separate Ayurvedic protocol. Do not try to integrate your own practice with Ayurveda just for the sake of case studies. I think it's something that I've noticed people who try to do that, it just doesn't work out. Once you're through with the course, go ahead and integrate as much as you like. So that's one thing. So it's pretty much, we know that Ayurveda is a complementary health system. So you want to make sure that you do not provide medical advice. You want to underline your scope of practice. So please have, even if you have, an RN or Angel, you're a personal trainer or yoga teacher. So whatever you may be, just make sure you have a separate disclaimer for your case studies. And if you want to cut, copy, paste mine and, make changes, very, very happy to share it with everybody. Everybody does it anyway. They go to my website and they copy everything. So that's fine. So flattery is good. What is it? It's copying is the sincerest form of flattery, something like that. So it's pretty much, you want to disclaim any responsibility. For Carolyn, you might want to have something even more comprehensive than this. Maybe also a disclaimer where they give up any rights to sue you. So this is something that's used by Chinese medical practitioners, because if you're a physician or in the medical field, it's a bit more difficult. So I'm just trying to give you a bit more practical advice. And second things, if you are, for example, Carolyn, if you are in the medical field, you need to have separate insurance. Please do not make your own formulas. Use ready-made formulas by companies like Maharishi Ayurveda. So, it's not your responsibility. It's harder for people who are in medical field. Um, yeah, do not do that. So what I do is I'll make my own formulas, and I just sell it as, I won't even give a receipt. Um, or, I'll make my own formulas. I'll give oils and so on and so forth, but people know what they're coming for, right? I'm not bound by anything else. I know that Dr. Aparna is trying to start her own practice um, in San Francisco, and because she's a physician, it's much harder for her. And so better to go through a company that, is already, I mean, most physicians I know use Maharishi Ayurveda. I mean, I think most of you met the Maharishi Ayurveda people. They're really sweet, beautiful. If you want me to introduce you to Thomas Krupa, they give a 45% discount to practitioners. And all of their herbs and drugs are, they actually use bhasmas, which no other company does. And it's actually done to FDA standards. This is why all the physicians use it. So I also use it for people who are being referred to me by a physician. But if I have my own client, I've known them for 10 years, or they're Indians and they're okay with the churnam. And also the churnam that I use is coming from Banyan. For example, Bala is banned, or Sarsaparilla, Anantamula is banned. So I won't put it in my formula, but I'll make an oil with it. And we talked about Shankapushpi in the last class in the herb. Shankapushpi has a positive drug interaction if somebody is on sleep drugs. The scope of herbs is not so great in the 500-hour course that you actually know enough. For example, I mean, okay, I'm just going to go back all the way to block 1. And all right. So if you remember this, you will do, so what we did in block 1, we have a person, we actually have them do an entire test on their prakriti and vikruti, so they actually fill out this 3-page form, and then they fill out the form again, and we count the numbers. I mean, this is something, I mean, if you went to a physician's office, you'd have an assistant who actually makes you fill the form before you meet the physician. And since we do not have the luxury, it's just not, Ayurveda doesn't pay you enough. It just doesn't work that way. So one of the things that I do is I actually have people fill out the forms even before they come to meet me. And the way I motivate them, I will say, listen, it's, whatever, I charge $75 for a consultation. But if it's going to be 2 hours, it's a minimum of, $90 or $100. So if they fill the forms, they save that money because, it's my time. And everybody does it, believe it or not. Why would they not want to have it? Everybody does it. This is the block 1 form, Carolyn. You already have the block 1 form, don't you? This is the block 1 form. I'm just talking about the block 1 form. Okay. Let's see. Is that better? You can actually look on the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can make it big. Can everybody else see it? It is something that you can make. Yes. You don't have to use our form. You can just use the use it as a guideline. Okay. So basically, the form is actually just a guideline. It was just about coming to that. The form is a guideline. It's something that I created so that everything that, one of the things, we are an online college. We come, we lecture, you do a test. Really, it doesn't really tell us, what's happening and if you're able to apply the knowledge. In block 1, the way we find out if you're able to understand the concept is through this form. And this form is just a guideline. So obviously in block 2, we expect persons to do their, when you have a case study, have them fill out the form. But please use the other tools that you've been given. If you've already attended the Darshanam workshop, please use the tools like looking at their eyes, looking at their tongue, checking their nadi or pulse, and finding out the dosha, prakriti and vikriti from there. So I think we already did most of that in the July workshop. And those who haven't attended it, this is why it is so important to attend that workshop. I know last year there was one particular student from Houston, and she couldn't come. So, but she did attend the 7-day workshop with Dr. Ladd, which is good enough. I mean, because that was apparently that was nearer to her. And then we had another student, she went and attended another workshop with, another Vaidya who had come to their locality and was doing a couple of workshops. So if you can find someone who's doing an Ayurvedic diagnostic or pulse or any workshop or Maharishi Ayurveda, just go for it, because you do need that, in block 2, you do need the tools, the diagnostic tools. So really, if you know how to take the pulse, you can find out the Prakriti and Vikriti in 10 minutes and no forms needed. I mean, of course, we're not expecting you to do that, but these are the tools that you've been given. So the July workshop was all about, looking in the face, looking at a person's body, eyes, tongue, looking at the color, looking at the lines, and so on. All right. So obviously you have them do this, and this is pretty important. Again, I'm going back to the block 1 form. Use the Agni form to find out Mandagni and Tikshna. And this is something that you've done in the block 1, so it's no big deal. Point is that doesn't change in block 2. So you can start doing your case studies, at least preparing someone to be your case study, and at least do this part now. And you don't have to do the the protocols right now. You can do the protocols after a few weeks when you finish the ahara or whatever protocols are available to you. But at least this is something that's available to you. When we start it, the reason why the forms are created the way they're created is we always start with the dosha first. I mean, in the Ayurvedic consultation, the person doesn't walk in and say, "Hey, Vaidya, I have a headache. Can you help me?" It doesn't work like that. Whether the person has a headache or a person has a joint pain or the person has a migraine or they have IBS or celiac disease or they're stressed out or whatever the issue is, we still need to find the Agni, we still need to find the Prakriti and Vikriti, and that hasn't changed since block 1. But we have been just cramming this knowledge for the last 6 months or so, just cramming it down, almost just eating it. And the idea is, when I designed the course, the way people will usually do, they will kind of just in the block 1, they just memorize and regurgitate it. But that's not really what we want you to do. We want you to apply that knowledge, which is why this is a little bit more difficult. It's not just a quiz. It's you have a real person and you're applying that knowledge. And you can make your own form as long as you use this as a guideline. We want to know the Prakriti and Vikriti of the person. We want to know the Agni. Why Agni is very important. If a person has, like in the last class, there was an example of Gugulu formulations. If a person has low Agni, then any multimodal formulas are not going to work for them. For example, if someone has never ever been to an Ayurvedic practitioner before, they have never taken a Western herb before, they have never taken a Chinese herb before, and their Agni is deranged. You just can't give them a huge big formula or ask them to change too much. You always start simple, and you always want to balance the Agni by using daily routine protocols, seasonal routine protocols, by changing their diet, adding very, very, very simple churnams and herbs. That's all. Always, always, always balance Agni first. Always balance Agni first. Even if the Vikriti, whatever the Vikriti, we found out the Vikriti based on the Agni. So we found the Agni, and then of course we go on. You found out what the doshas are, and the subdoshas are, and this is an issue. So by now, I'm assuming everybody knows what Brajak, Ranjak, Alochak, Pachak is. They don't really need this. If you do, go ahead and use it, but this is the form now. We are already assuming you know what prana, Vyana, Udana, Samana, Apana is. If you don't, please go back and memorize it. Please go look at the flashcards. There's quite a few. We already know the symptoms of Alochak, Bhrajak. Very simple, somebody is showing yellow eyes and their body temperature is up, their tongue is yellow. We know that's Ranjak Pitta. They are unable to sleep, unable to process information. That's Sadak Pitta. Eyes are Lochak, Bhrajak, Pachak. They should be on our fingertips. And if it's not, that's okay. There's enough time to go back and memorize it. This is why you have the form part 1. Look at the part 1 if you have to. That's okay. That's all right. If you can't remember, what was Apana, what was Udana. Okay, one of the things that I've noticed when people are doing it, somehow they remember the Vata doshas and Pitta doshas. It's the Kapha nobody ever remembers. I don't know why the poor Kapha gets left. But, anybody who's Kapha person who has, let's say people have back pain, right? People have back pain all the time. That is completely to do with Avalamba Kapha. They have back pain. It could be, they're a Vata person, their Avalamba Kapha is a little dry, they have a dry cough. They can have heart and lung congestion. Even if someone has, the heart chakra is kind of in an emotional turmoil, that is Avalamba Kapha issues. Of course, Bodha Kapha people remember because you've talked about Bodha Kapha being the salivary enzymes, Kleda Kapha being the liquefying of the food in the initial stages of digestion. And anybody who has sinus issues, I get a lot of people who have issues in their spine and even people who've had MS. It's all about the cerebrospinal fluid, isn't it? What is MS anyway? It is your issue with the cerebrospinal fluid is kapha, which is being affected by, pitta, and it's affecting the nerves. That's what it is. I mean, start thinking in terms of how Ayurveda is. If you want to go back and look at this, go ahead. But really the aim and objective is to be able to look at the doshas and know and say this person has an issue with samana. You should know it. If you don't, that's all right because you're still learning. But go back and, go back and you should know this. Anybody who's going to pass out and graduate from our college, they should be amazing. That is my, I try very hard. Dr. Kirti tries very hard. Atul tries very hard. We give our heart and soul. And I have done classes when I've had 106 fever, and Dr. Kirti has done classes, when she couldn't move. She had this, her wrist wasn't working and she was doing everything from left hand. Atul has done classes, staying awake all night and preparing new material. We are so committed, and we really present everything to you on a silver platter, just to make it more interesting. And it's a lot of hard work. And the good news is we seem to attract people who are attracted to this hard work. So this is a very important, knowing the names. Really, we want you to do more Sanskrit. If you don't want to, that's okay. But the reason I say that is because I've taught in other Ayurveda academies, and a lot of times students will graduate after 1 year and finish the 500 hours, and they can't remember. I ask, can you tell me what Avalamba Kapha is? They can't remember because we did that in the module that was 8 months ago. So there's no going back and looking at it again. No, we have already given you the Sanskrit, Carolyn. Now it's the onus of this is up to you. Please go and memorize it. We have given everything we needed to give. And obviously, batch 10, we're still going to be doing more Sanskrit. So this is one of the things. Again, you don't have to use our form. Just use it as you always start with the Agni. You have Prakriti, Vikriti, you got the Agni. And of course, when you're doing Agni Pariksha, you definitely want them to have your own form. Like I use a form in which I ask them, what do you have for breakfast? What do you have for lunch? What do you have for dinner? What are the activities you do? I mean, I just recently had a case. I had so many cases in the last 2 weeks of chronic constipation. This person has chronic constipation and just goes once in 5 days. So is dependent on all these laxatives. And this is it. I mean, I looked at the filled up form. Breakfast was, I don't know, some donut or something and oats. And lunch was, again, salad and chicken or whatever. And dinner was, again, some white flour junk food. So there you go. You found the causative factors, and I just I changed the lunch, and he says he can't give up sweets. So we have not done anything with it, but we have changed the donut. And I mean, of course, I gave him trifala and senna and so on. So it's already he's normalized. Uh, okay, let's go back. So this is exactly that you had done. General. So you still going to go back to that form that you did in block 1 to start your case study. And it's a good way because this is something you did a long time ago. And you can choose partner, husband, friend, client, let them know. And with a case study, it's going to take a month or two because we expect you to do a follow-up. Obviously, in real life, it's not going to happen if you have a paying client, who every time comes to you pays. So a good idea. It's hard to get people to give you so much time unless they're free. So have them volunteer, and people love a good free consult, and they get a lot of. And if something is that you specialize in, if we don't expect you to be a specialist in Vastu, but I do like to know what direction they sleep in. I just had one person who hasn't slept well in 7 years, and 7 years ago he moved into a new house, and he has got a television in his room, and he faces west, which is the direction of air, which is the direction of his mind is always racing. So we removed the television and we changed his direction. We gave him Bringaraj and a lot of things already. Even before he has come to me for a second follow-up, he's feeling better. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Now let's go back to, we have done this. We have done the disclaimer, Ayurvedic age. You have had them do this forms, or you've used the tools in the Darshanam workshop. You've done the Agni. Let's see. And let's do the Mala Pariksha. So, you can have your own form or you can use our form. You want to talk about if a person easily sweats, their Purisha. Okay, excuse me, please. Sorry about that. I'm doing the class from my office because I have a couple of clients after this. All right. Okay. This is pretty important. Of course, we need to know what's happening with the Purisha. So if you remember, the Purisha Vahasrotas are the last point of the Annavahasrotas. You want to know what's happening in the Annavahasrotas. Mutra is your Mutra Vahasrotas. Obviously, right now you haven't talked about the Shrotas. We really go into a lot of detail about Shrotas. I think, Sapna, you attended the class on Mutravaha Shrotas Vyadhi by Block 3 students. So that is something we really get into the disease of each Shrota. But really, this is be keeping in the scope of the practice, their mala, whatever they're sweating, whatever's coming out of their body is telling us what's going happening inside. You want to look at their nails, hair, skin, tongue, and of course, if you haven't attended the workshop, and if you do, we have this huge PowerPoint presentation on the tongue and how the tongue is a mirror image of all the organs. And if you attend the December 6, 7, 8 workshop, you'll be repeating that. So we also look at the biofeedback of the face, the eyes, the nose, and so on. How with the eyes we can know if a person might have cholesterol issues or vata issues or elevated liver enzymes and so on. There's so many things that we covered, and I hope you keep on going back. So of course, like not everybody has attended the workshop. So Nadi Pariksha is one of the most important Ayurvedic tools. If you have attended, it is available to you. Excellent. If not, whatever Pariksha is available will do. Let's go back up. So you've done all the subdoshas in the last block, and this we will be covering in the December workshop. And let's talk about the dhatus. Obviously, since Asti, Meda, Majja, Shukra is not in your scope, so we don't even expect you to find it. Last class, we talked about Rasavahashrotas, Raktavahashrotas, Mamsavahashrotas, and in detail, we've talked about Rasadhatu, Rakta, and Mamsa. The reason is when the disease process starts, it's traveling either from the external pathways or the internal pathways. It has either moved to the extremities, or it's passing through the marmas, or it's passing through the dhatus. If it's passing through the dhatus, it'll always, you have kapha, pitta, vata. They've moved from their sthanam, they've moved from their location, and they start traveling either upward or downward or sideways. So if you have textbook of Ayurveda part 2 by Dr. Ladd, there's a chapter on dosha gati. So dosha gati. And if you look at the dosha gati, then you will notice that he talks about how the doshas are moving upwards, which is Udyaga gati, then you have Adhogati, then you have a Tiryaga gati, sideways gati, and both left and right gati. When doshas travel to, usually the disease will then travel with the doshas. And when it reaches the rasa dhatu or rakta dhatu or mamsa dhatu, either the doshas are traveling with ama or they're traveling without ama. So really, we don't, if you have figured out the asti meda majja shukra, excellent. If you haven't, that's okay, that's outside your scope. Because really, Ayurveda is a 5-year medical course in India, and we are trying to do everything in less than a year here. So obviously our scope is much more limited. But this is quite a bit if you think about it. If it's a woman, all kind of menstrual issues, breast milk issues, all, you know, this is so easy to treat because it's simply rasa dhatu. It's the first dhatu. So, you find out what the issue is, and you, along with the doshas, you point out what is happening with the rasa dhatu and why do you think it's happening. And then in the rakta dhatu, why is there vata, pitta, or kapha and rakta? Is there vriddhi? Is there decrease? Is there imbalance? What is happening? It's maybe a person has ranjak pitta issues, or they're anemic, or they have lack of oxygen prana, or that you feel there are impurities in rakta dhatu, like ama there, and so on. So you want to write that down, whatever it may be. Vata, pitta, or kapha and mamsa increase if somebody has gained a lot of weight. So we're not going to go into the meda dhatu because it's the mamsa dhatu that or somebody has lost a lot of weight, autoimmune disorders, and so on. One question I'll like to address is, somebody had asked me, what about thyroid? So if there's a thyroid issue, it comes under mandagani, especially if the thyroid is not functioning to its standards and it's not producing enough hormones, or somebody's in synthroid or anything. But if thyroid is working too much, or sake of case studies, I think it's something that I've noticed people who try to do that, it just doesn't work out. Once you're through with the course, go ahead and integrate as much as you like. So that's one thing. So it's pretty much, um, we know that Ayurveda is a complementary health system. So you want to make sure that you do not provide medical advice. You want to underline your scope um, of practice. So please have, even if you have, an RN or Angel, you're a personal trainer or yoga teacher. So whatever you may be, just make sure you have a separate disclaimer for your case studies. And if you want to cut, copy, paste mine and, make changes, very, very happy to share it with everybody. Everybody does it anyway. They go to my website and they copy everything. So that's fine. So flattery is good. What is it? It's copying is the sincerest form of flattery, something like that. So it's pretty much, you want to disclaim any responsibility. For Carolyn, you might want to have something even more comprehensive. So in order to improve the experience and making sure everybody gets it, because when students present their case studies, even if it's half a case study, we know where they stand because we know how much of the knowledge has been applied. So I'm going to start with, this is a disclaimer that I use personally for my practice. And even if, Carolyn, you're a nurse, even if you're, everybody needs to have a disclaimer. And without a disclaimer, do not do, even if it's your relative or friend or neighbor you're using as your volunteer, please have them sign it. And if you haven't started practicing and Sapna, you already have a practice, Angela, you already have a practice. So I'm sure you have something you're already doing, but add something about Ayurveda as well. So do not use your clients as guinea pigs. You, have a separate Ayurvedic protocol. Do not try to integrate your own practice with Ayurveda. Just further than this, maybe also a disclaimer where they give up any rights to see you. So this is something that's used by Chinese medical practitioners, because if you're a physician or in the medical field, it's a bit more difficult. So I'm just trying to give you a bit more practical advice. And second things, if you are for example, Carolyn, if you are in the medical field, you need to have separate insurance. Please do not make your own formulas. Use ready-made formulas by companies like Maharishi Ayurveda. So, it's not your responsibility. It's harder for people who are in medical field. Yeah, do not do that. So what I do is I'll make my own formulas and I just sell it as, I won't even give a receipt. Um, or I'll make my own formulas. I'll give oils and so on and so forth, but people know what they're coming for, right? I'm not bound by anything else. I know that Dr. Aparna is trying to start her own practice in San Francisco, and because she's a physician, it's much harder for her. And Namaste, can you hear me? Perfect. So today is September 21st. It's the equinox. Astrologically, it's a very important day. So with that in mind, it's a good idea. I mean, most of you started herbology today to send out prayers and especially to Lord Dhanvantari, who is the presiding deity for all the herbs, and hope and pray that whatever we learn, may it come, because this is such an important transformational time for the seasons. And of course, whatever's happening outside is also happening inside. So with that, I'm going to give a little prayer to Lord Dhanvantari, Om Dhanvantaraya Namaha. And also give a little prayer to Krishna. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate. One of the things that I kind of wanted to discuss today was uh, just the case study form review, the block 1 case study form. One of the things that we've noticed with everybody who submits their case studies. Now we're an online college, so most of the course is done online, but it is pretty interactive, and it's really when the students start submitting the case studies, we realize, oh my God, they never understood A, B, or C. And it's hard for us to go back and say, you need to do this again. So some people end up taking, 3, 4, 5, 6 months after their course is done. So one of the things that, Dr. Kirti and I decided is that we want to introduce the case study forms early, because what we used to do before was, hey, all your modules are finished. Here's your case study form. Here's an example. Here's a sample. One class and do it. And we didn't think we were doing a good job.